So welcome, we're very glad to have you here. Would you like to just introduce yourself very briefly? Oh, and also when you speak, just press the button, the gray button on the microphone. So that will be sure that
Okay, colleagues, my name is Tesfaye Wolde Medhin. This name Wolde Medhin, maybe I should say a little bit about it. It is Amharic, very common structure. Wolde is son of, and Woldemariam, Wolde Selassie is son of Trinity. Wolde Gabriel, son of Gabriel. And that kind of thing. Wolde Medhin is son of the Savior. Medhin is, it relates semantically to the word medhanit, which is medicine, which is metaphorically what Christ's role was. You know, so Wolde Medhin, so Wolde Medhin, it's a Semitic structure. Anyone who knows Arabic would also understand Wold. Wolde is son. And there is the possessive marker, son of. So that's why the two words are compound. I mean, they are together, they shouldn't separate. That's why I put the hyphen, because Medhin would be a totally different sense, separate if you say Mr. Medhin. So anyway, so much for my name. Now, I am originally from Ethiopia, and I came here quite some time ago, you wouldn't believe it, 1987. And that's when I joined the grad school in cultural anthropology. I started a PhD program and finished quite late after that. And in 2014 was when I deposited my dissertation. And since then, I had taught a little bit here and there in Illinois, different colleges and universities. But I never really left Urbana. Urbana is kind of, has turned to be my second home. It is one of the places on earth that kind of I grew up in so many ways. So a lot of what you know about me now is really something that I acquired in Urbana. And so I wouldn't go too much into that, but my dissertation is about rural people, globalization, the state, and rural communities. So looking at the three levels of historical, social, cultural processes and how they interrelate. I was reading an article today about social sustainability, just to kind of orient myself, and a lot of it was about community. Is a central concept in this discourse about sustainability. One of the concepts, I mean, and my dissertation speaks to that very much. So, in a sense, I have some kind of affinity, intellectual affinity, to the idea of sustainability. And my research interest is very much about rural Ethiopian highland environment, as a very important dimension of the concerns and the lives of people in the highlands of Ethiopia. So that is briefly what I can say about myself.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that introduction.
Thank you.
I don't think I even knew some of those details about you, so thank you very much. And I think that what you will bring to the commission will be a perspective that we haven't necessarily had as part of the commission before. Kate, will you please call the roll?
Stacy Gloss,
Present.
Dustin Allred,
Present.
Claire Johnson,
Present.
Todd Rusk, Andrew Stumpf,
Present.
Morgan White,
Present.
Tesfaye Wolde Medhin,
Present.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda that commission members would like to make? Okay, this evening I have one change to the agenda. We do not have a representative from the Off Fossil Fuels Act to answer questions for discussion about that continuing business item. So I would like to strike that item from the agenda this evening, and will invite the speaker from that organization to speak at to speak to the campaign at a future meeting. Okay, approval of minutes from the December meeting. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Can I don't think I was included on the roll of the last minutes.
I will go ahead and ask for changes once we get a
Oh.
second. Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
My name was not on the roll of the last month's minutes. Thank you.
I know you were quoted. But did you come in, were you here for the roll?
There are two additional minor edits that I would like to have changed to the minutes. Under changes to the agenda, it says there were no changed to the agenda. I would just propose that says there were no changes to the agenda. Again, just a minor comment. And then under new business, under the approval of the 2018 meeting schedule, motion was made by Mrs. White, seconded by Mr. Stumpf. It does not state that the motion carried with no changes to the schedule. So I think that we just need to add that motion carries there. Are there any other corrections? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. There are no, I don't have any comments, and there are very few members of the public here this evening for public comment. Welcome, Michael. We will discuss an agenda item later on with the Ready for 100 campaign. Did you have anything that you wanted to address in public comment for right now? We will get there. Okay. All right. Scott, will you please introduce your staff report?
Sure. Good evening. First, some updates on Climate Action Plan. We continue to work on a guaranteed energy savings project with a vendor. We're currently working to separate the city's projects or improvement measures from the library's measures. The library they're actually meeting tonight and may discuss this a little bit tonight. But they're working to potentially have two phases where they would do their chiller replacement right away and then hold the rest of their projects for a later date for consideration. So we continue to work on that. We've just barely started conversations with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association on a third round of the solar UC program. We had 447 kilowatts of installed capacity, I think it was last year. So that's still a lot, and I think warrants another round as long as we can come to agreement with MREA. So we're going to be talking about that later this week, hopefully with them. We are going to look at potential improvements to the model. A couple of things we're considering are ways we can garner a broader countywide or broader municipal or community participation in the advisory group. I think we just had Urbana and Champaign represented last year. So we'll look at different ways we can do that, and then potentially some other improvements. We had asked in our RFP last year, we'd asked for representations of the vendor's ability to offer a power purchase agreement, as well as the cash purchase that is more traditional in that program. So that's something we'll probably discuss. And I'd actually like to just pause here and see if there's any comments from our last 2 years that folks would recommend us suggest in the next coming year. No.
In the selection process, when we went through selecting a vendor, I remember that I had some questions. It was the first year that I had been a part of the commission, and so the first time I had participated in an evaluation process for evaluating the solar companies that had applied. And I remember having a couple of questions, and I had that I don't believe necessarily went answered. So I understand that the representative from MREA is probably incredibly busy, and this is not the only city that they were working on the project with. But in terms of responsiveness to questions from the commission in understanding the process for how to go about doing the scoring and whatnot, a little more education on that front for commission members would have been helpful for me, and so I hope to have that in place a little better this year.
Sure. Yeah, and how to exactly structure it. You know, MREA's interest is to have community buy-in, and we had used this commission as a way to do that, but we also wanted that buy-in to be broader than just Urbana. However, because it was conveniently so, but because it was essentially brought into the SAC meeting, that may have signaled to others that this was really just an Urbana thing and no one else needed to participate. So one possibility is we move it out of the SAC meeting to make it a little bit less of an Urbana-centric and more of a broader community-centric. And then another consideration is in past years, I hadn't participated in the advisory group, in part because I wanted to clarify that it wasn't a City of Urbana procurement, but that may be another benefit of separating this a little bit further from a City of Urbana commission, so that there's clarity that this is a Midwest Renewable Energy Association procurement, which the city is just supporting them and what they choose to do with that procurement. So a few things that we're going to discuss. Any further comments? Be happy to take them.
Yeah, I think it would be maybe worthwhile. I think we should consider asking the folks who did install it in the last 2 rounds if they have any recommendations for going forward. Also, as far as getting more conversation for participation, when you're talking about the advisory group, I think maybe there's a selection committee or something and a larger advisory group, so we would all be part of the advisory group, but the selection committee might be 5 people that are from various stakeholder groups, but for getting that broad, just for reaching out to get participation from outside of Urbana or Champaign-Urbana, the email list for the county practitioners meetings is pretty long and has all people from different villages and cities around the county.
moving on, I've got some information here on the schedule that we have for our two different inventories, our two different greenhouse gas inventories that we conduct. So we do a community-wide, Urbana community-wide inventory, and then a City of Urbana facilities and operations government inventory. And we do them every other year. So every year we're doing one or the other, right? So we're always doing an inventory. And so this coming spring 2018, we'll be doing the calendar year 2017 community-wide greenhouse gas inventory. One thing to consider here is when we wrote the climate action plan, we said, you know, our target date is 25% reduction by 2020. That was the goal that was set so many years ago. But it didn't clarify whether that was by the beginning of 2020 or the end of 2020. And of course, you'll know whether or not, you know, where you stand with respect to your goal after you do the 2020 inventory, which would be conducted at the beginning of 2021. But if you look at the schedule, your opportunities in terms of keeping this rhythm is doing a community inventory for calendar year 2019 at the beginning of 2020, or doing a community inventory for calendar year 2021 completed at the beginning of 2022. If you waited till spring of 2022 to know if you got a 2020 goal, it's a bit anticlimactic. So something for the commission to consider is whether you would want to construe that 2020 goal as being by the beginning of 2020 based on a 2019 community-wide inventory. And I'll pause there.
Any questions from the commission?
But the goal is both the community and the government?
No, there's no city facilities and operations greenhouse gas emissions goal. That module is a separate module, but included in the same software package that we use for the community greenhouse gas inventory, and it's easier to run because it's all stuff we control. So we do that so that we know where, you know, our facilities stand and we can track it. I mean, the third option I didn't mention was we can do an additional inventory, you know, 2 inventories both in the spring of 2021. That's doable. It's not costless. It takes staff time to do.
Scott, I don't recall, does the government inventory get included but not separated out during the community inventory? It's like,
Correct, because it's just rolled up with everything else.
so it's just a subset.
For instance, this building would be rolled up with commercial energy. And we don't need to decide tonight.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if not knowing what the intent of that date was when the plan was made, it seems, just off the cuff, it seems to make more sense to use the 2019 completed in spring 2020 to say something about whether or not that goal has been met, rather than waiting an extra year or 2 by the time it's completed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate being 0.5% away from our goal. And let's say if that happens, maybe we'll wait another year and see if we can get it, but that's not what I anticipate.
Yeah, I agree with Dustin that when we pick those dates to know when to check something, that's when we'll know, or that's the number we'll know, that's the number we should use, as opposed to doing extra inventory. Because the tracking is so time-consuming. It's important, but probably not enough to do an extra one, in my opinion.
Okay, well, that's good direction, and we can discuss it again if folks are interested in that.
Scott, is this something that that the commission would need to, I guess, is there like a formal edit to the climate action plan that would need to be made? This is just sort of like okay, so when are we going to say the climate action plan through 2020 ends, and when are we going to count the greenhouse gas inventory towards that?
I think you can leave it at the level of verbal interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah, we've interpreted it. I don't know that we need to, update a climate action plan and post it to the website and all that. I don't think anyone's going to be calling to ask this question. It's pretty in the weeds.
Okay. If we can continue this discussion also sort of like in further meetings to try and figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Next item I've got in the staff report. We obviously have an interest in procuring more electric vehicles for city fleet. That is challenging in that most cities purchase passenger vehicles through the state's joint purchasing program. Essentially, the state competitively bids prices for vehicles, and then they allow any city to utilize those prices. That's part of the big bid package, the bid language. So those are always very competitive prices because the offerers are getting a lot of volume. Potentially every city that's buying a car this year is going to buy through the state joint purchasing. However, there are no electric vehicles on the state joint purchasing bid documents. They've never asked for prices for electric vehicles. So staff has made inquiries with Central Management Services, which is the administrative arm of the state of Illinois, about what it would take for them to ask for prices for some electric vehicle. And they told us that they would need to develop a specification and that they would like some sense that someone's going to use this bid price. It's not going to go unused. And so we've sent them some language, some information on what that could be used to build a kind of a generic electric vehicle specification. And also we've expressed that the city of Urbana is certainly interested in procuring more electric vehicles, passenger vehicles in the future. So they haven't, there's no, as far as they've represented, there's no formal request for them to do this or to do that in the joint purchasing. They just said communicate with us. So it may behoove us to ask our friends and colleagues in other cities to make the same expression of interest. But I think that's probably the best we can do at this point in time. But it would be really powerful if we were able to buy EVs off of the state bid. They're going to be going out again for prices in June of this year is what they've represented. So that's where that's at.
Do you have any sense of what the interest is in other cities of doing something like this? Like Chicago, for example, I would imagine if they were to get involved, that would change things quite dramatically.
Yeah, in fact, Chicago's buying electric buses. I don't know if maybe Chicago does their own procurement for vehicles because they would be the single largest purchaser. Or maybe they use state bid, I don't know. But that's a good point. If Chicago said they would utilize the joint purchasing and express their interest, that would probably be pretty powerful. I presume that, if the price were right, every city would be interested in, their inspectors who just drive from, one building to another, not off-road, who drive 20 miles max in a day, would be very interested in an EV. In a lot of ways, there's less maintenance. Battery replacement's a consideration, but there's so much fuel and maintenance savings, probably overwhelms that. But I think we just need to reach out to our colleagues and ask.
Scott, does the universities also buy their vehicles under that program?
I don't know the answer to that.
The university does buy things through Central Management Services, bulk purchases on occasion.
Okay.
I don't know when they do what.
So that would be another group that can
Mhm.
jump in.
And the university is very interested in electric vehicles, but right now they are simply not cost effective, and it's a self-supporting fund. So if this could lead to a reduction of 25 or 30% of the cost, then
Well,
that'd be great. But it's hard to see how much reduction you'd get until it happens.
true. We did our, I mean, you could look at the prices that they have now and compare them to what retail is and see what the difference is and get a sense. We did our own procurement all by ourselves for one electric vehicle, and we bought a Mitsubishi MIEV, which is now discontinued. We bought that for, I think it was $17,000. That's about what I think the cheapest vehicle on state bid is $16,000, $17,000, $18,000. So you get to those prices, that's a big difference from retail. But like you said, we don't know what the price is till we ask. So if CMS is able to ask, that would be very helpful.
Are there other states that have gone through this, like California, maybe?
There's a group called Climate Mayors, and they immediately rallied mayors to express support that they would implement the spirit of the Paris Agreement at the local level, and Mayor Marlin joined that. They were discussing. They did a letter of interest or some such thing for auto manufacturers, and that's partly what spurred my interest in this. I'm like, well, we don't need, the cars are manufactured. That's not how we buy cars. We don't buy them from the manufacturer. We buy them through joint purchasing. And so I presume that other states also have joint purchasing through the state. That seems to be an extremely practical way to proceed to me. I don't know if others are doing it. Next item I've got is just a summary of the pledges and resolutions requests that have been made of mayor and council and SAC. Just a summary for you all for reference. Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to U-Cycle. We've recently accepted bids, new bids for a new contract cycle for both U-Cycle collection services. So we have separate contracts for U-Cycle curbside and a separate contract for U-Cycle multifamily. These are 5-year contracts with a 2-year optional extension. And in our last cycle of contracts, we went to 5 years and we extended. This year, the vendor ABC, who has done recycling and garbage work for us in the past, was low bid on both contracts. So we've accepted those bids. We went through those procurement documents with a fine-tooth comb. We made only minor cosmetic and clarification changes. We didn't change the list of acceptable recyclables. We looked at what other communities were doing and what we thought we could do, and what it comes down to is if you accept more materials, you pay more. We already accept all the materials plus some that have some recoverable value. So we kept the list that we have, and we got competitive prices from the vendors. last month, I put in this detailed chart of the outcomes from our recent electronics recycling event. I put it in again, but then I also added some new data, which was just a summary year by year of what our community-wide or county-wide electronics recycling events have garnered. We had a little uptick in total electronics tonnage this year, not the most ever, but substantially more. And most of that is still CRT TVs. It's amazing how many are out there, and there's just no let-up. I mean, there's an absolute number. They're not made anymore, but they just keep coming in. And that's the real drag. That's the financial drag on this. Most other electronics have some recoverable value, but the CRTs are very costly. So,
Scott, do you think that we got more in the more recent year because of the more efficient use of time at the collection system? Or wasn't it kind of the same time frame, but
Could
went
be.
through faster?
Could be. We've used that scheduling system for 2 years. This year was different in that we were conservative with the amount of time per slot last year, or in the first year that we used the scheduling system. In the second year, they reduced the size of the time slot because we were able to get cars through. So we got more cars through, that's for sure. So that might have something to do with it. And a final note, just some additional activities from our division. In addition to the 2 U-Cycle contracts, we also rebid the curbside leaf collection, facilities and street can waste collection, and battery recycling collection. This year, first time, as far as I can tell from documents, Urbana has insourced Christmas tree collection, and that is going to be performed by Urbana Public Works. And they ran their first route today. All things that we're working on. Next Sustainability Advisory Commission meeting would be February 6th at 7 p.m.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any follow-up questions from the commission on the staff report?
Has advertising for the electronics recycling varied at all across years? Is that
I think in years past, so a few things they do every year. They have print materials. They always seem to get excellent coverage on CI Living, and in fact, typically someone often, the recycling coordinator Courtney Kwong, is on the show talking about the event.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes there has been paid ad placements in the newspaper. Since we have this schedule system where folks sign up online for a specific slot, and there's a lot more folks, those slots fill up in a couple of days. I've suggested that we really don't need to do, we need to do a basic level, but we don't need to spend a lot of money on advertising because we're filling up the slots. And so, yeah, that's kind of the pattern.
Is there a mechanism to ensure that the people participating or dropping off waste are only Champaign residents?
I think they're asking for like a bill or something like that. I don't remember the details, but yes, I think they are working on that.
All right, moving on to continuing business. The first item on our agenda is the Sierra Club Ready for 100. I guess I could call it a campaign. We'll be discussing, I guess, discussing the merits of having Urbana potentially join into this group to become a Ready for 100 city, or to be recognized as a Ready for 100% city, renewable energy city. In our packets, we were provided with the case study report and also, again, a little bit of information just showing the differences and similarities between the Ready for 100 campaign and the I Matter pledge. So I will open it up to the commission members if you have any questions, and we may also call on Michael, who is here from the Sierra Club this evening, who has been educating, I think, the public about this campaign and about the work that Sierra Club has been doing on this in this avenue to provide more information. If you would like to actually join us or by sitting it there, that would be great.
It's a nice chair.
So just for clarity, we're talking about the Ready for 100 campaign on its own, and then later discussing all of the other ones that were suggested, the off, which got moved. I'm sorry, it's just we were looking at the I Matter pledge, the off pledge, the Ready for 100. So are we just trying to understand and see our stance on this particular one? Stacy.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that we want to sort of see where we stand as a commission, or just see where sort of we stand either through what we have sort of learned in the past so far and what we've been learning at these meetings about the Ready for 100 campaign, and to discuss that campaign. We would have actually, I think, gotten to this in the last meeting, but we ended up, because the last meeting went a little bit long, we ended up saying that we would discuss that this evening. Just as a note, the Off Fossil Fuels Act, there's enough sort of different about it because it has to do with legislation and more of federal bills and asking for the state to support, that I think that we can discuss that as a community separately from the Ready for 100 and the I Matter pledge. There are just similarities between the Ready for 100 and the I Matter pledge, that if we were signing on for I Matter, are we also interested in signing on to become a Ready for 100 city? Are there pros and cons to joining? Is it beneficial to make those commitments? I also know that we've discussed in some meetings a reluctancy to state that we would take action without necessarily knowing exactly the way that we would get to 100% renewable energy or 100% clean energy or carbon net neutrality. There was just some hesitancy to do that without having plans forward, but there's probably a bunch of information right now that could show a path forward. So I am opening the floor to the commission to discuss this topic.
Okay, so the reluctance, I think I was the primary person being reluctant, and our discussion really resolved that for me last time, because we have to find a way, and these commitments are not that we know exactly how we're going to do it, and here's the fiscal, alignment of the budget and the exact path and methodology. So I understand that. So I don't have that concern anymore at all, including with the Ready for 100. And from my perspective, reading these, as a commission, we already said that I believe we said we support the I Matter pledge, which is 100% renewable electricity. And there's no reason, except for talking about the method to get there and the cost to get there, but there's not a ethical reason of any kind to pledge to 100% renewable electricity and not 100% renewable energy. And in fact, the energy side is what we really need to get to as a world, as a globe. So I'm in support of this, this commitment for our city as well.
I agree. I think. Oh, were you going to say something?
Cool. Yeah.
I think the devil will be in the details in terms of how we plan, which would be the next climate action plan, I guess. That will prioritize the actions that we can take that will get us to that point, or move us in that direction, which we know a lot, but there's also a lot of uncertainty, particularly in terms of the ability to make these kind of investments and pay for these kind of things. So, but I think it sends the right message, both to the local community and to the broader public and the market that might be looking to develop different things that would help us get to that point.
So one of the things also that I enjoyed when I was looking at the case studies document, I've heard of most of those cities. And I loved the idea of Urbana being one of those cities that the other cities have heard of. And so, we would be on the map. We'd be the one in Illinois. And so I really thought that was a neat idea, so that it's an opportunity to show our leadership, which we've been doing for so long, but get that recognition into a group of peers. Instead of, right now the list, I don't know how big it was, but there were, there's a few dots on the map, like 30, what is it, 50? So before there's, thousands and thousands of dots, get our name on there when we already know we've made the commitment, really, because of the climate commitments. Or to me, it's the same thing, just more complete.
Seems like iMatter is actually more stringent on the regulations or the goals. So if we already have supported iMatter, I don't see the difference, actually.
Okay, it sounds like there's a bit of support, or quite a bit of support, from the commission at this time. Is there a motion? Or would somebody make a motion?
What are we looking for? Is this another thing where we're passing on our recommendation to council, or are we saying that we support it ourselves, or?
A little bit about this as well, because the Ready for 100 campaign is much more geared toward mayors. Of course, it's you want to recommend it to the city council as well, if at all possible, because that's another way you can provide just momentum in general. But really, kind of the core of it is getting the mayor to sign on to this pledge that then sort of gets the city council and the commissions moving toward figuring out how that's going to become a reality, which is what most of you are voicing right now. So I think probably the best thing to do would just be to recommend Mayor Marlin to consider signing onto the pledge, and then from there I think momentum would really pick up in terms of starting to find out what the path is from there, and looking at the case studies as well.
I wonder if, is it okay if I say something, because it's directly relevant?
Yes. Eric, would you address the mic, please, though? Thank you.
So just a point of information, the council will be looking at updating the city goals with sometime this spring. So if you want to recommend that this be incorporated explicitly in the city's goals, that sounds appropriate to me.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that under advisement.
Oh, yeah. I think that's, that's definitely like in line with what I was thinking as well, because the more just attention it receives, I think the more likely it is that Mayor Marlin would think that there's enough support that signing onto it would be feasible. So I think, yeah, that makes total sense to me, definitely.
Just to expand on what Councilor Jacobson was referring to, maybe not everyone knows. I think it's every 4 years, mayor and council go through a set of additional meetings, additional public meetings to city council and committee of the whole, where they outline mayor and council goals. These are high-level priorities for the city to achieve in the following 4 years. Is that a good summary? Yeah.
Okay, so I think I have a follow-up question for Eric. Just along those lines, to have this or this topic become to sort of be put on the agenda to discuss or to become a part of the mayor's and the city council's goals over the next 4 years, what would be the right mechanism to bring the issue to the council and mayor's attention? Would that come from a city council member? Can that come from the chairperson of this commission? Should that come from Scott's office? What would be the best method for doing that?
Yeah, I think the mechanism would be for you all to make a recommendation that the council do this, and for Scott, as the staff person assigned or devoted to your community, to your committee, to present that at council. And if you want to have, a large number of environmentalists, people who are committed to sustainability, to attend that meeting, that always creates an atmosphere that is, conducive to the right thing happening, and also conducive to getting some media attention.
Thank you very much.
It seems to me that in addition to the city approving or signing on to these commitments, both the 100% Ready for 100 and the I Matter youth resolution, part of the same city goal would need to be to update the Urbana Climate Action Plan, which if it's a 4-year goal, this fits in. So it would be along the lines of, sign these commitments or, join these campaigns and initiate an update to the Urbana Climate Action Plan to identify next steps to meeting those.
There's a line in that. It's, I think, maybe the last action in the current climate action plan. I think it says staff work with the SAC to make plans. I don't remember the exact wording, but to take some action to achieve the 2050 goal in the climate action plan, which.
When is the 2020 end date? When the next climate action plan, I'm sorry, does the Urbana plan say do a new one in 2020? Or does it just say
It doesn't
move towards
say
that?
January 1st or December 31st. It says a plan to achieve the 2050
Right.
goal, which would, there's a 2020 goal, so that goal's over either beginning or end of 2020, and then you're moving
Make the
on
next
to the
plan. So that's
80%
what
by
you're saying.
2050, or if mayor and council choose to set new goals, whatever that would be.
So it's already in there, but making it one of the top goals of the council is different than just having it listed as a to-do item in the climate action plan.
Fair enough. I may advise keeping the language open so that if we want to do a comprehensive plan like we have, we can. If we want to adopt and sign up for a framework like Stark Communities system, we could do that as well, or instead of, or something.
So if we agree on iMatter, then there's some goal we have to meet by 2025, right?
Yeah, I think it's the renewable energy goal. Yeah, 100% of communities' electricity from renewable sources by 2025.
So the city council might decide to, in their 4-year plan, is to say, start that process, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. Is there a motion? For,
I was going to make a motion.
All right, great. Thank you, Morgan.
So I'd like to, or I move to recommend, have this commission put forth a recommendation to the council to sign on to the iMatter recommended pledge, which is called something else. Sign on to the iMatter pledge. We made that one. To sign to actively participate in the 100 or Ready for 100 campaign. Let me start over. I move that this commission submit a recommendation to the council in support of joining the Ready for 100 campaign, and include our sustainability commitments in the next set of priority goals for the city.
We should also add that we ask the mayor to sign the pledge for the 100.
Okay, let's go ahead and restate this motion.
Let me ask. I'm
Yes.
sorry. So the mayor should sign it.
With the iMatter pledge, it's structured a little bit differently. They don't really have a mayor-centric pledge. It's much more like council-based. But with the Ready for 100
Ready for
campaign,
100.
they do. They have something that they've had mayors sign in different cities, and that kind of is what spearheads the campaign taking place in a new city, if that makes sense.
So I almost now I'm wondering if it should be two separate points, like one to the mayor and one to the council.
I would like to just reiterate the discussion that we had at the last meeting, which said that the Urbana Climate Inheritance Resolution, which was brought by iMatter, proposed by iMatter Youth Movement, would commit the City Council to achieve carbon net neutrality community-wide by 2040, actively working towards generating 100% of the community's electricity from renewable sources by 2025, and create a mechanism for the inclusion of members of the youth community in the formulation and implementation of climate-related goals and policies. A motion was made by Todd, seconded by Morgan, to encourage the mayor and city council to support the Urbana Climate Inheritance Resolution and work with the commission towards developing the goals provided within. Scott reported this evening that he plans to bring that approved motion to the committee of the whole in February. So the issue that is before us right now, since we've already taken action to make a recommendation on the iMatter resolution to the City Council, we are now only discussing whether or not we would take action to recommend the Ready for 100 campaign to the mayor and with support of city council. Does that make sense? Okay.
So the resolution would go to the mayor, or to the, I guess I'm confused. Do we send stuff straight to the mayor, or do we always send it to the council? Or Scott?
Either or
Or both? Okay.
I think in these circumstances, you may let the requester direct that. So, as Michael said, iMatter is asking for a council resolution. Ready for 100 is asking for a mayor signature of support.
Okay. So, can you read back what I moved? No. Okay. I could just start over.
You recommended that this commission put forth a recommendation in support of joining the Ready for 100 campaign and include our sustainability commitment in the next set of goals in the city.
Plural commitments.
So we could just add, when we ask for participation, just add in, have the mayor sign the, or you could construe that same thing. Yeah. Sure.
Michael, is the language correct that we would be asking the mayor to join this campaign? Or is it that we're asking the mayor to sign a pledge for Urbana to become a Ready for 100 city?
I think either way, it should get the correct message across. I think by saying, like, joining the campaign, I agree with Scott that it kind of implies, like, oh, like, the mayor would sign on, and then there should be, like, active participation by other parties as well in terms of actually making that goal a reality. But, I mean, if we wanted to kind of make it more narrow and say, like, you know, and we request that the mayor sign on to the Ready for 100 pledge as a sign of support for the Ready for 100 campaign, I think that is similarly, accomplishes a similar goal. But I do kind of like the broad wording, because then you have the active participation after the fact of, like, hopefully there's it maintains that momentum rather than just kind of the mayor signs it and then it's done, I guess. If that makes sense.
Okay, is there a second for the motion?
I second.
Okay. Motion is made by Morgan, seconded by Andy. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Or edits, if you wanted to revise that at all. Yeah, I know. I think I can recognize Marcus at this time, sort of.
I was just wondering, is there public input on each of the items?
We can do public input after this item if there are very few members of the public right now present this evening, so if you would like to make a comment, we can do that after this motion, if that's okay. Okay, thank you. All right, any debate or discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Michael, thank you very much. All right, I will open up the floor for public comment on the topic of the Ready for 100 campaign. And also, if you have a question about the staff report, you can also address that at this time. Marcus? Also, will you please just fill out the comment form?
Sure.
You can do that when you're done speaking if you like, or
Sure,
prior.
Marcus Ricci, City of Urbana Planning. I just had a planning-related question about the goals for meeting renewable energy and electricity. When it states 100% or some other goal of renewable energy or electricity generation, does that mean generation locally in the city, or does that mean that the city can contract to purchase a package of green energy where it's renewable energy that is generated elsewhere, or can it be renewable energy credits that the city buys from someplace potentially out of state that count as green energy? Because those are all then have local planning impacts. Do we need to rewire our zoning ordinance to allow for large-scale wind farms?
I know that specifically with Ready for 100, it does not imply that it has to be energy produced within city limits.
Okay.
There's a great case study, a booklet that has plenty of city examples, and a lot of them contract energy out from other places within the city, within the state, as well as outside of state borders. So specifically with Ready for 100, I know that that is not the case, but I cannot speak to iMatter. I don't
Okay.
think it has to be local, but I'm not an expert on that.
Okay, that would be my only concern, is
Right.
signing, yet it's important to not get stuck in the details, but if all of a sudden you commit to a goal that's really difficult to meet current regulations, then the staff need to
Right, and that's
be aware of that.
definitely something with the campaign they wanted to avoid, because, I mean, you also have big cities that want to get in on the action, and they just don't have the space to
Right.
make massive wind farms or anything like that, so they're not limiting it in that sense.
Okay, great, thank you.
Marcus, did you have any follow-up questions or anything else? Go ahead. Okay, great.
Not
No,
on that item, no.
Thank you so much. I would also think that when we are working on the climate action plan after 2020, that there will be a public process and sort of a transparent process for the way that that plan is being developed. We have not yet come up with the framework for how the plan will be developed,
Okay.
but I would hope to have someone from the planning commissioner from the planning be a part of be part of that process going forward.
I'm sure Scott will include us.
Okay, great.
This is just a timeliness issue. I wanted to make sure that we were helping as much as we could.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on the next agenda item, wait, are there any other final thoughts that anybody has on the Ready for 100 campaign or anything for that discussion? Okay.
Just really, really slight. Is this something that can go to the committee of the whole in February with the iMatter, or does it have to be, is there too much preliminary work that has to happen for it to go?
Both of these are going to be referred to city leadership and to the mayor's office for consideration on a future agenda. I've suggested in the staff report this February simply because there has been so many things on council agenda this January.
Okay. In the last meeting, we decided to set up a sort of ad hoc committee on public engagement. Andy, do you have an update from the public engagement committee?
Because of the holidays and because of our schedules, Scott and I, or Todd and I haven't met yet. We plan to do that next week. So we'll have an update for you in the next meeting in February.
Any other questions or comments on the subject from commission? Okay. I don't have any agenda items under new business. Are there any announcements? Does anyone from the public have any announcements that they would like to include this evening? Okay, with no further anything on our agenda for this evening, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.